And video is live. Yes, we are live.
Seeing the presence of a quorum, I'll call the Pelham School Committee meeting to order at my computer, I don't know why, 5:33 p.m. on Tuesday, April 7th. And we are not virtual, so I'm not gonna ask everybody to say they're here. So public comment, I will say that there's one written public comment attached, and we have someone here who would like to give public comment.
Sure. Okay. Hi. My name is Len Beach. I have two children in the Pelham school. I was just wanting to make sure I mentioned a couple of things. One is that I'm hoping that you all can help sort of get to the bottom of the cameras in the school situation. I know it's going to come up later. But I think there's a couple of things I'm confused about. One is that in Dr. Z's update, she mentioned this is, I just have some quotes from her statement. This is relevant in Pelham where the campus is open, has multiple entry points, and is frequently used by the public outside of school hours. So I wasn't aware that the school is open to the public outside of school hours, outside of like scheduled meetings. That seems like we know who's here. So I'm wondering who's using it. Do we not trust them? And what does it mean that the campus is open? That part wasn't clear to me. And then any cameras located in hallways are configured to record only when school is not in session. So admin have said differently. I've heard directly that admin are hoping to use it as a third-party observation tool for resolving conflicting stories that may arise for issues. My child also reported that teachers are saying cameras are in there because of some bathroom vandalism that has happened. So I'm not sure if we can kind of figure that out. And she also said cameras are motion activated and do not record continuously. So does this mean that someone then like flips a switch at the end of the day to turn them on to their motion activated on position? And then is this the end of aftercare or the end of the school day? So she also said that's not, the information is not stored in the cloud. I find it hard to believe this day and age that it wouldn't be, but I don't know. I think like my biggest concern is that the stories are sort of changing and unclear. I'm not necessarily totally opposed to it. It just feels weird that if we have a really tight budget right now, we're counting every penny, that these kind of showed up. And I don't know if it was approved by you all or where the money came from. And it just feels sort of weird that it came in under the radar. So I just would like to have more transparency around that. And also I want to also make comments about school choice and make sure that it's being advertised properly for Pelham as best as we can, going into the next year for kindergarten so that we can help for the sustainability of the school. And I know you guys are voting on a budget tonight. I don't have a lot of details about that, but please, like, you know, I'm here to say I would love if you could give the most money so that we can have the most schools. I'm not updated on what's going on, but as a Pelham parent, that is my request. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I see no one else for public comment, so we will move into the new and continuing business part of the agenda. We have superintendent's update, the budget vote, school committee goals is on here. That'll be brief. Committee updates, and then if there's anything that we didn't anticipate. More, and then the consent agenda. So future agenda planning. So for that, I'm going to move into the superintendent's update. And Dr. Z, I see you on the screen.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And we're
Thank
gonna-
you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can turn it on. Dr. Z, could you try speaking, please?
Hi. I don't feel very well today, so I'm not talking much louder than that. I'm gonna try. Is that
No,
good?
that's fine. The TV was set to all the way at the bottom, so you're fine.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I think my update was attached to what I knew was attached, and so I don't like to read for people, but what I'll do is I'll walk through. So I'm gonna walk through central key areas that the chair asked me to provide an update on based on current things that are occurring in Pelham and most recent events. So my goal is to provide clarity, context, and transparency as we move forward as a clear system. So the first part of the update was how does the central office work? And key thing, it's a shared service model across 3 districts. Central office, there's 2 things. In the budget, there's a section called central administration. And that does not incorporate all offices that sit within the central office of district administration. So I need to clarify that. Central administration in the budget really focusing on about 5 areas. I believe it's a superintendent's office, finance and business, facilities and operation, HR, and IT. Our student support offices sit in a different cost center in the budget, as well as our family center and curriculum and instruction. So when we're talking about how the budget looks versus how it operates, there's clear things. The central office model is interconnected, is a small, I would say, interdependent system where we operate across different models. Smaller districts like Pelham, usually I've been trying to reach out to other districts that operate the way we are and have not regionalized, and may or then they operate within unions. We have not found, we've been looking in terms of the documentation that outline how the proportions for the allocation or the allocations for the central office have been. So we will be later on recommending that the committees kind of document that. But our central office is cost shared. Some positions are funded solely by Pelham or solely by Amherst or solely by region. Some positions are shared between 2 districts in the central office where they might just be Amherst and region. And some positions are shared across all 3 districts. For example, my position, finance, the IT director, our C and some of our curriculum and instruction individuals, HR, things like that. Those positions sort of share across all 3 districts are allocated 54% region, 42% Amherst, 4% Pelham. But this is an FTE in terms of funding only. This is not in how work is allocated. And so you actually, if we were to equate the 4% contribution to work, the Pelham does not only receive 4% of services. It would not be. And so therefore, it's hard to equate the level of support that is received to the 4% that is allocated to someone's salary. Because in actuality, you're receiving a full-time central office, and that is because it's a shared service model. The key takeaways for me in terms of that area, and I'm just going to rush through them so that I can get to the questions portion, is that Pelham has full access to a central office. For some individuals that are staffed and support the office, like I said, we want to ensure that we have clear outline duties. We reduce duplication of roles and costs. I'm going to ensure continuity. But as Pelham continues to have conversations about potential separation or how roles are implemented or how things or activities move forward, it is important to understand that that may create a standalone model and may increase both financial and operational responsibility for Pelham. So we can talk more about that in terms of central office. Kindergarten registration. Historically, prior to me arriving, there was always a kindergarten registration night or a kindergarten night. This was a combination, as again, because you had one centralized central office, this was a combined activity where everyone, both districts came together. It would be the same thing where you come in, parents had a general opening by the superintendent. Last year was my first year. This is my second year. We introduced them to whatever district resources are available. And then they split out and they meet with their principals for the upcoming year. I believe last year Pelham may have had 3 parents, two parents that showed up, 2 families. Thank you, Mickey. 2 families that showed up. It's really not, the turnout is not very large when it comes to Pelham. And so, but the main crux of the night is really for the central office to kind of do like an introduction of all of the resources that's available, engage with our community partners. And so I know there was some conversation this year about registration. We'll talk more about that in the budget, but we shifted the name this year, and it's going to be we're not calling it registration night, we're calling it kindergarten resource night. And it will be on April 27th, where the central office will conduct their combined distribution of resources and meet the staff and talk about everyone and what it is. And then they will go ahead and break out in smaller groups. The hiring updates, we did hire a new administrator of mental health and behavioral services. She's hit the ground running. She's been leading the bullying prevention intervention plan work. She's been updating some of our grants. She's been working in terms of our policy gaps. I believe she even was joining on a conversation today with Brim. So there's a lot of great work that's happening. The director of SSO, we're in that hiring process. The screening committee has been identified. That position closed on March 31st. And so, give me 1 second, sorry. Thank you. And so we will definitely keep you in a loop as that moves forward. In terms of the camera installations, this was brought to my attention. I believe there was a public comment that was brought forth and things happened and I released information around the camera installation. The request for cameras started based on what I've learned with past administration. There was camera placement originally started in the division of facilities. It transitioned over to IT. I think last year there was an additional request to install cameras at Pelham. The cameras were installed over February break. And like I said, to the school committee, I would have brought it forward. But there was a breakdown in communication, and so that gap has been addressed. Key things is that the cameras do turn on in the evening after school is closed. The after school program is not a Pelham Elementary District program. So that's one of the key things. I know I heard some of the public comment. I tried to jot down some of the questions. No cameras in the classrooms, no cameras in the bathrooms, no cameras in private spaces. I was not informed that cameras were going to be used throughout the day to monitor behaviors, but as of right now, based on what I've been told by IT, they do not turn on till in the afternoon. So that we've already talked about the approval process. There's no live monitoring, no facial recognition. Our IS director does not believe in placing things in the cloud. I don't either. There is a server that is locally placed in the school, and it is a district server. That is where the recordings and everything go to. The only person has access to that is our director of IS, and I have strict requirements in terms of requiring or asking for camera footage. One of the things is Pelham, the playground, Mickey, and correct me if I'm wrong, the playground is often accessible when the school is closed, when school is not in session. Also note that from the rear end, like the library area, there's ways that you could access the campus. When I say or an educator says the campus is open, there is no gate. There is no gate that is blocking public access to the school. So in actuality, you could drive straight onto Pelham's campus and park and have a 20 to 30-minute conversation with someone right outside of our school. An altercation can take place, different things can happen, and it's on our school grounds. So when you talk about a campus being open, there's actual open access to the campus and the property to the public. It's not closed off. There's no gate for them to go through that we lock on the weekends or afterwards. And I'll answer more questions. I did include a FAQ in there. School choice. Oh, I did want to say we will be updating our handbooks because that is something that we did not do. We will be updating our handbooks to include for the upcoming school year, to include the fact that there are cameras and how the cameras would be used and the footage would be accessed. We will not move forward with installing additional cameras without informing parents and informing the school committee. as the process is supposed to be done. School choice. I think that for me, I'm gonna summarize this to say, um, we were asked to explain a little bit about the school choice process and some of the key things to think about or to that I want to highlight outside of what I put in my update is the process that has been established when it comes to registration and school choice, especially for Pelham. Pelham has been listed as a I want to say as a school choice mandatory option when it came to registering for school choice in our districts. So a lot of parents would express interest in Amherst per se. And if the space was filled in Amherst, they were automatically kind of guided towards Pelham. So those are kind of some of the operational things that we're looking at right now as we separate the processes and separate the districts and make sure everything is outlined because we are not sure if that's how it should have been, so we're not going to do that moving forward. We also note that seat determination is based upon the amounts of seats that we can hold. So if a classroom, for example, first grade, can max out at 20 students, but we have maybe currently 10 students going to first grade. And so we would not open 10 school choice seats because we still have to account for the fact that if a child moves into the Pelham Elementary School District, we would want to make sure that we have seats available. So even with us determining what that's going to be, we may say, okay, for first grade, we may have 3 seats, 4 seats. We in conversation and in working with Mickey in the last 2 years, Mickey reaches out to figure out the census, how many children are in that actually live within the Pelham School District. We have that conversation. We know that people can move in, can move out. And so we often make sure that we have enough seats to account for the spaces that we could have available, as well as if we have someone that moves into the district and we have to make sure that they have a seat because we are their school. We're a public school system. Critical things that we also think about is Pelham's actual infrastructure. Pelham school building is not huge, and so we would not want to max out the classrooms because we want to think about safety, the amount of desk chairs, and those types of things. So, those are all things that we take into account when we're sitting around and determining how many seats are available. Of course, the school committee already voted to approve that. We usually have a application window. Opening up the application window earlier doesn't really help us at this time. But for example, Mickey starts, I think it's the 19th, the 18th, next Saturday, the
So
18th.
the open house,
Yes.
yes, 18.
So the 18th, prior to us opening applications, Mickey usually has like a school choice open house where she has parents come in, they do a tour, she talks to them about the school, and then after that, we kind of like by May or so, we open up our application for school choice. And we're following our same timeline. We understand we understand the urgency that the community has come to with, but we've also put some processes in place, and these are long-standing processes. And so I would encourage, like, usually Mickey's the person who does this on her own. And I think last year she had about 4 families that showed up, or 5 families that showed up. I think this year teachers have volunteered or discussed the fact that they would go and help recruit, but then we're also looking at the substitute cost because now, again, this hasn't been built into our previous budget. And so there's a cost for substitutes. So there's a lot of great ideas and things that we want to implement. And we're working with school leadership and our district team to implement them. But we also need to understand that how does this affect our current student population in terms of instruction that's in front of them? How do we make sure that we're not leaning against an already lean budget? I know we're talking about the budget from next year, but our current budget did not build in a lot of the things that we're being asked to implement. And then usually in July is when we have the school choice lottery. If there are more students than the seats available, we have a random, it's the lottery is randomized. So for example, like I said, if in first grade, we said we only have 5 seats, but we have 8 first grade school choice applications, we would do a random lottery for the 5 seats. If we had in second grade 7 seats, but we only had 6 applications, and those 6 individuals would automatically, I think, get their seats, because then we would have closed our process. And then Margaret asked for us also to expand on the 6th to 7th grade transition. In 2019, DESE issued updated guidance around. We used to move children who were choiced into a district immediately into a regional school district. 2019, that was updated. Our former superintendent did issue a letter to families, stating that would not continue. I think they gave a time frame, and this is that year. And so every school choice application, it's listed on there. It's a line on there. In March of this year, not March. I have the date and I'm seeing it wrong, but our registrar did send an email to families reminding them of the guidance and the fact that this is that last year and they will not automatically go into the region. This was sent to all families, all 4 towns, so that individuals understand this and that they know that they will not automatically transition. We will work with our middle school and high school to identify choice seats, same process, and then walk through what is available and not available based on seats. And I am going to stop there so that the team and I are available to answer any questions. I don't know if anyone is saying anything because I can't hear anything being said, so.
I have questions, okay. I'm just conscious of how often I talk first. Can you all hear me on there? Can you hear me okay, Dr. Z? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just gonna go one by one. I think that'll work. Can you share where you are with the hiring committee or the interview committee for the director of student services? I know you said is that in process? Is that committee developed? I'm curious if I'm on the CPAC list and typically they email out when there's a hiring committee and I haven't seen that, so I'm curious if there's involvement from CPAC.
So yes, I can tell you that they actually sent a name for the screening committee, and I think they submitted a name for the interview. I'm not sure, but I know they submitted a name for the screening committee. So I don't know what process they use because I've asked, but
Okay, it's also possible I missed it with other updates. I just wanted to understand where you are. Thank you. I'm gonna ask this question and might be told this is not a question for this meeting, but I am curious if the region is able to prioritize siblings or to prioritize students who have attended one of the regional elementary districts. Is that possible? Do
No.
any of my colleagues know that?
The answer is no, but Marta can expand. I think we do not prioritize when it comes to school choice for the region. It's the same process. We're not supposed to prioritize that.
Correct.
I thought siblings can be.
Well, when it comes to, I'm sorry, I don't have my camera on.
No problem, Marta, go ahead.
Yeah, so we can, given spaces, if there are enough spaces, we clearly could, if there was a decision to be made, we could prioritize. That's one of the school choice recommendations by DESE, but there are very specific ways around it. So yes, they can be, we can contemplate that, but we have to follow specific instructions. But yes.
Right. So it's not as easy as, yes, we're going to prioritize that.
No.
But we have so I don't want to put forth the perception that because you have a sibling, you automatically get in.
No.
There is suggestions on how to prioritize by DESE, but I just do not want to say that. And I know when I came in last year, there was a situation in another district that where they talked about we just transitioned from automatic enrollment where if you had a sibling, there was an automatic enrollment. And so that's why my thing is like, I just want to make it clear, there is no automatic enrollment. There's a priority process, but you can't be automatically enrolled into the regional district.
Sarah Bester Williams.
Yeah, I was at another district, not here, and they had, so if they had 8 choice seats, they would hold a sibling choice seat lottery. And then they would hold a non-sibling choice seat lottery. Is that something that would come from policy, or is that something that is procedurally up to the superintendent and their designees to decide how that works?
My understanding is procedurally, because the seats are, again, like Marta was saying, it depends on the number of seats that we have available. And so that actually my understanding is it would be the district.
Yes. That's
Okay.
my understanding as well.
Thank you, Martha.
You have more?
Yeah. So I think it was 2019, the Massachusetts changed the law.
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't a decision,
Sure.
just like a local decision. Massachusetts changed the law that said, once you are in a district, you are just there to the end of that district. And if that district then filters into another one. So what happened was any kid who was in at 2019 got grandfathered in. So it's not that they
That's what this year
so
is.
that's what's happening this year, is that those kids have transitioned all the way through. My understanding is that also you cannot, so if a kid from random town, right, Springfield comes to Pelham. Once they're done in 6th grade, they're not a Pelham kid anymore, they're back to being a Springfield kid. And so then then they're back in the lottery of choice into the region.
Yeah.
So they're divided now. And I think there are some, like they said, there's like a little bit of ability to have some preference for siblings, but Desi is pretty clear that you can't make.
That's the only.
Yeah, and then it is like the school committees get to decide if you're going to participate and be a school choice receiving district. And then how that happens is an administration decision. So even if, say for Pelham, the school committee decides that we are going to receive students, but our administration decides our classrooms are full, then even though we've decided to be a school choice, it doesn't mean we have to take more students, or we can take more students. So that's what the plan is.
Thank you.
I also want to say, like, I have been asked, can we just open seats for a sibling? Like, and when we don't have seats. So that's why I want to be very clear, like, it's not an automatic, like, we've been posed a series of questions when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Dr. Z, I would also say that because of the size of the school, I mean, other districts may have those kinds of leeways and those opportunities, but given that it's only one classroom per grade, there's that limitation as well.
Yeah.
Sure, thank you. Okay, I've got a few more and then I'm happy to pass the mic. This is less a question and more just I want to say out loud. In your update, Dr. Z, I see the note about central office potentially using a decent amount more staff time from central office than the 4% that we're paying. I am interested in getting real data on what's really going on what are billable hours from staff at the central office, what that tracking might look like. I know that's not a small ask, but especially with the work that you and I are going to be talking about separately, Dr. Z, with the Futures Committee and the work that you're doing with community members in Pelham, it feels really important for us to have a fuller grasp of what central office time and costs are as a committee here.
Can I make a quick comment?
Can I explain?
I also looked at that and I did the quick math. So for an 8-hour day, it's like 28 minutes of anybody.
Sure.
So 4% of assuming an 8-hour day is like, I think it was 28 minutes.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say that, again, it's all about intent and purpose, right? This section was to show that there's a cost allocation to it. And I know I hear a lot of conversation, and we experience a lot of conversation around the central office and what's done and what we pay for and those types of things. I think the total cost of the central office and the Pelham budget is probably less than $10,000. However, you get a fully functional full-time central office. We do not sit down and say, like, FTE doesn't include hours worked. And so that's the purpose of that section. If you're asking us to then, if you're asking me to identify split employees and have them cost out or track out how much they work per district, that then opens up a different conversation. I don't think any of the three districts want us to go to, which is hourly. All right, like it would end up being that you would end up paying us hourly, and it would be more than what it is that is truly allocated. So the statement was really to bring in to perspective the fact that the central office, especially the split employees, actually it's a service model. It's a shared service model where we are supporting all three districts. And I think like and these and this is what the FTE equals, but the FTE does not translate into hours worked and what we actually put forward to serve and run the districts. And I think Jenny wants to add to your question, Rachel. I see your hand.
Yeah, I think it's not only would it be like extraordinarily difficult to try to track that down to the hour, but I also think based on my observation and it's the central office has to be extremely responsive. So it's also not like a snapshot in time answer. Like there are some months where Pelham is going to require significantly more and other months where we may require significantly less, and it's very situation dependent. So I think maybe a way of sort of doing the financial analysis would be to look at if we were to try to have our own administration for Pelham, what positions would we need to have in place and what might that look like? How might we have to like figure out the costs for having the equivalent positions in place for us? I think that might be an easier and sort of more practical way of thinking about what we would what we would end up paying if we didn't have a shared central administration.
William?
I was just gonna say that I don't think of it as FTE, and I think that's looking at it wrong, because I don't think Pelham, saying that Pelham only pays for 4% of your time, I think is wrong. So I would look at it as either we have 61-ish students in Pelham, or we have 128 students in Pelham. So when I look at how many kids are in the region, I look at how many kids are at Summit, I look at how many kids are in Amherst, I look at how many kids are at the preschool. We're like 5% of the total population. If we just look at our Pelham kids, we're like 2% of the population. So
They're all your kids, sir. They're all your
I
kids.
think paying the 4%, because I mean, some students are not going to need district help and some students are going to need more district help. So I don't think looking at an FTE is really a fair conversation piece, because I think it's more what's the whole body of kids that we're servicing, and then it should be divided up by the number of kids, which is what we do for the region. It's based more on the rolling average of number of students. And so I think that we should look at it in that way. And in that way, we probably, if we're looking at how many choice kids we have, we should be paying 5% of the share. If you're looking at how many town kids we have, it's like 2.5%. So then 4 kind of fits in the middle. So I think maybe we should like figure out, are we going to include the choice kids in those numbers or not? And then maybe we should reevaluate the splits between the 3 towns. But I don't see that 5% is that drastically different than 4%. And even at 5%, you're only going to be giving us 20 minutes of your time. So like, it's like, that doesn't work. Like the FTE piece doesn't work. It's my opinion.
So again, the FTE is only about how your salary is broken down in terms of full-time equivalency. It does not account for our time on task, right? Because we're not hourly employees, we're salaried. We get a salary, and this is how it's paid across the 3 districts. What I will also say is that I would strongly advise the chair of Union 26 to have the conversation and bring it forward and probably formalize it between like them and the chair of the, like, bring it together and formalize this, because technically you are correct. First of all, to clarify, the choice children are our students, because once we have accepted them, they are ours. So it is 120 plus students. It is about 5.6% that would have to be paid. I think region would be 52%, and then Amherst should be 44% if we actually allocated it across the enrollment. To me, that's that. But again, we would need the districts to come together and formalize and determine how they want central office to operate, because it's all about the shared cost. So that's for me. We don't, like Jenny said, we don't turn around and say, oh, it's been 20 minutes of our time, we're done. No, from January till now, like every day, we account for what's happening in all 3 districts, and we put the same effort towards Pelham that we would put towards anybody else. Our job is to make sure we support Pelham and it is able to function best. So for me, I serve 3 committees with the same energy. And each of you have your own different viewpoint of how you want to operate, how you want to do things, what you think is expectations and priorities. The communities that we serve all have the same things, and we don't have the option as a central office to say, no, we're not going to look into this, no, we're not going to do that. So in actuality, even if you think about 8-hour days, we do not work. Central office in the top individuals that would actually be, if you were to use what Jenny said and said, look at the positions that you have to have. Your finance person, your curriculum person, your superintendent, your HR person. If you were to look across those critical areas and determine who in central office you were supposed to have, none of those individuals are hourly. None of those individuals only work 8 hours a day. Like those individuals have to extend throughout to make sure they could support and do what needs to be done. So I'm not saying, like, technically it's not about the time. The breakdown in how we are paid will never equate to how we service the district, right? Because we put the same level of service into each district, and it is really honestly and truly how we move forward each and every day.
And just to add, I think that the size of, and I don't know how this works, but like Amherst preschool or whatever it's called, I think is about the same size as Pelham Elementary. As far as students, I think.
Who?
And just
The early education center.
the early education center, it's about the same size as Pelham for the number of students.
They have about
Is
70.
that-
70.
Oh, I thought it was like
90.
100.
Sorry, it's like 90 students. Sorry.
Okay. So then does that roll into Amherst budget?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that where that comes from? Okay, so then those kids would be rolled into that percentage, because I think the percentage of Pelham students is lower than what you had said, because I think it's more 5 or a little bit lower because of the early educated, whatever that school is called.
The couple kids in the pre-K, that's what you're saying.
All the kids in the pre-K is about almost the same size as all the schools, all the kids in Pelham.
Uh-huh.
But I do feel like
What
that's
question are we trying to answer?
that's what I was saying. I do think that conversation is for something else. But
I
How
just,
the funding works.
I just make
It's
the
a thought.
statement that I hear everything you're saying, and I think particularly as we're looking to long term, I don't think this is so much of a conversation for tonight. It is not just $10,000 that Pelham pays for central office salaries. I have the salary sheet and it's around 110. And I think it is important for us to have a fuller sense of what the real percentage of time that is spent by the central office in terms of costs are, so that we can be making informed decisions as we move forward. That's not like with an intention of being over anybody's shoulders, and I think we need a fuller understanding of what's really going on.
But are we trying to find out whether the amount of central office that we are paying for is the fair and appropriate amount?
I didn't have a question. We're not trying to find anything out. I
would like to know.
I just wanted to point to that as something that like there was a decent amount of time spent on in the superintendent's update that stood out to me, and that I'd like more information about long term, not tonight. You might have a question related, but I didn't have a question.
Not a today question.
I had a question about the percentages and how we got there, but.
I-
And if it's equitable for all towns.
I think I would just add also that the suggestion that maybe this is something in the future that we need to formalize would be a really good thing to do, because I know Amherst has its own concerns about percentages. So I would just add that for the future.
I mean, that sounds, Dr. Z made a suggestion that Union 26.
Yeah.
And the region, I think, would have to look at it.
Yeah, and I think that would be a good way to do it.
Yeah. Okay,
I agree.
what else?
I've got two more.
Go ahead.
Okay, I know we keep hearing that the school choice timeline is the same as last year. I've seen a couple of parents share one by email, I believe, to the school committee. But I have seen that last year's school choice opened around March 20th. And I'm curious why it's a month and a half later this year. That's the question.
So one, I haven't seen that email. If you can forward that
Sure.
concern to me.
Yeah.
I can't investigate concerns.
Sure, yeah.
Second of all, one, I don't know if we started advertising like our Pelham open house earlier. I know that there's different things that we're doing different this year to include the registration, to include splitting out our forms, and making sure that Pelham has everything for its own district. So I would say that there's critical things that we're doing this year to separate the processes. But we're still, to me, on track with our spring enrollment and numbers.
Just for myself, I did not see, I don't see anything wrong with the forms being combined. I don't think the forms that I saw in the beginning were confusing and were not aligned, that it was two separate districts. But I'm not opposed to sharing that service if it's communicated and the posters and flyers are done in a way that it's not confusing to families.
You're talking about the kindergarten registration or our forms for?
The kindergarten registration.
Okay, so
Like,
on
I
the,
know we have talked about separating that out, and I don't know if that is like, that's not necessarily a direction I think we need to go. But, and I know you've made the comment before that we would get the rollover of the choice kids who didn't get into Amherst. And so I think that has a benefit. But the forms that I saw were just confusing in that it had like dual enrollment and it had different things on them. So I don't want to get, I hope that the message that I was trying to send is not that I want it to be separate. I want it to work the most effectively that it can.
so
And
it
I don't
wasn't,
think
it
what we
wasn't
were
your,
doing in the beginning was effective.
so it wasn't your choice. It wasn't your, so first of all, we received feedback from multiple school committee members around the kindergarten flyer. But what I'm talking about is our forms, our actual forms as crafted as they currently are, right? What people complete and different things. We are working to update those and make sure that they outline clear, like, this is Amherst, this is Pelham, this is, so it is, I'm not talking about the flyers. We did update the flyers and correct them. Like I said, there were just some things, and we, between myself and Marta, we agreed that there were things that needed to shift and change. We knew that it was, one central office doing this thing and opportunities for individuals to experience both districts, and it wasn't clear, but we cleared those up and we resent them. So it's not the flyers. I'm not talking about the flyers. I'm talking about the actual forms that individuals and families fill out, and updating our entire process. You know, looking at, we have a new website now. We wanted to make sure that the correct things were up on the website. I think we still have some other things to finalize around this and make sure it's clear. And for me, I just want us to make sure, and the team agrees, like we had rich conversation around making sure that we identify Pelham as its own district. And I think that's the one thing the school committee has expressed, like making sure that Pelham operates as its own district. And so we want to make sure that we, whatever past practice or practice that we had, we look into it, we vet it before we implement it, but we vet it from the standpoint of what's going to be the impact to Pelham, and what's going to be the impact overall, because some things are not just costs, they have an operational impact like you're talking about. So we're moving intentional in what we do.
Okay, I'm coming back to what I just forwarded, I
Yes.
thought it was an email to everyone, but it wasn't, and I apologize about that, but I just forwarded it to the school committee and.
It's not attached. It's just said this is a screen.
Oh, yeah. Alright,
You can send it after. Next, you had one more question?
yeah, no, I just wanna emphasize, the reason I'm asking so much about choice and timing is, I like. For everyone to be really transparent, because we got press saying that the school might be closing, I think the more public facing we are about. That the school is here and that choice is open and that like the doors are open, not for security issues, but that we're here and open, I think is really important for the longevity of the school, assuming there's longevity of the school. So I did attach it this time. It's a screenshot from Parent Square from last March. So you can see the date at the very top. I would love if you could look into why the change in when the school choice applications might have opened, and I did not, Dr. Z, mean to have that as a surprise question for you. So if you could look into that and share with us when you find out, that would be helpful information.
Okay, like I just said, I know part of us, what we're doing right now is we're trying to make sure that
Yeah.
we outline our processes and make sure
Okay.
that things are not, there's some things that we need to address
Yeah.
to make sure that we clearly don't impact Pelham in the way that we may need to. So I'll
Yeah.
look into this. I'm sending it to Mickey and
Great.
Martha right now.
And I think the sooner that it can be advertised publicly that like choice is opening on my May 1st, even though that's still a bit off, the more that can be shared publicly, the better, personally. Okay, this is my actual last question. And obviously everybody. Security cameras, you heard the input from a couple community members. My biggest question, I do not think there is a lot of frequent community use outside of hours, aside from the after school program. The cameras are almost exclusively in the opposite hallway from where after school and outside events take place. They're almost exclusively in the older grade classroom hallway for those familiar with the building. And there are quite a few of them for that little hallway. It was like a little bit alarming the first time I walked in and saw them. But there's only one at the front door, one in the cafeteria, one in the gym. Anyone correct me if you know differently. But I'm confused about like really what's the intention there, because if it is around what's going on in the after school or outside hours, it doesn't seem like you're getting eyes on that. So I'm a little bit confused and interested to know more. That's the question. I just also want to repeat, lots of kids were told that the cameras were there because of things they did wrong. And that is concerning to hear as a committee member, especially if that's not the case. So I just like really want to emphasize that we be telling the kids what's really going on, and that might mean equipping teachers with more information. I don't know why and how that happened, but that's a concern.
So what I'm gonna say is that after this, because I want to ask some follow-up questions to the statements that you just made before I look into it. So after this, I'll reach out so that I can adequately work with Mickey to determine what was said and who said what. I will work with my IAS team. I think part of it was if there's a camera facing the front door, they can see straight down that hallway, and it can also possibly, but I need to confirm, also see straight down the other hallway. So placing a camera in between, like in the inside of there, wouldn't make much sense because we already have a range of sight based on the cameras that are there. If that makes sense. So if there's a camera facing the front door, it probably, and I haven't seen it, so I'll work with my IS to give you that confirmation. But based on what I've seen so far, and like the other schools and the cameras that have been used, they have a range of sight straight down the hallway. So if it's not just pointed at the door, it's going straight down. So I need to ask what was the intention and get clarity. but to my knowledge, it should not be, to my knowledge as superintendent, it should not be being used to monitor students during the day. So I will confirm and find out where that came from, and have that cleared up.
That'll make sense. I'm confused about the cameras in the other hallway. That's what would be helpful
Well,
for
line
you to
of,
look into.
so for me, line of sight and security, right? If we're trying to make sure that things are safe and we want all possible angles of what could occur. So for me, those hallways, and I always get turned around, right? But I think that's we come down the front and then
It's the first hallway when you're from the office.
right.
They're like every 8 to 10 feet down that hallway.
Okay, so I will say that I will check in with my IS team, and then I will have an update for the school committee.
Okay.
I have not been able to put my own eyes on it. It was my intention when I returned physically to put my eyes on it. So until then, I have to depend on what my team tells me. So I'll get an update and I'll reach back out to you.
I think a parent also asked, and now I'm remembering, can you share where what budget this came out of? Is it central IS or is it from a Pelham budget line can you find that out for us as well?
Sure. Shannon, I believe, it came from Central IS.
Yes.
Thank you. It came from Central IS. IS had,
They have their own account lines in Pelham, Amherst, and region, so it's under the IT budget in Pelham.
thank you.
So it came from the Pelham IT budget.
Right, under Central IS.
Okay.
William?
Yeah, I was gonna. So, just so clarity, because some parents or someone in the public made a statement tonight. So the cameras, so school gets dismissed at what time?
2:40.
At 2:40, so then the cameras go on at like 2:41? Or
I
are
have to
the
confirm.
cameras coming on after school?
I have to confirm the time.
Okay,
I
that'd be nice to be able to, the
yeah,
public.
I was looking in my email to see if I had the time, but I'm also trying to present here, so I'll make sure I get that clarified.
Okay, and then you said that it's being on a server that's here in the building. So
In the other building, in the school building.
here in Pelham, right?
Yes,
So then if there was an incident, your designee would have to come to Pelham to review the footage.
I believe so.
Okay. That's what I thought you said. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
And I guess that's all. Oh, yeah, I would also add to what my mind's gone
I'm
totally.
Rachel.
So
What Rachel said.
for clarity,
Is
I'm
that
sorry.
I had a couple interactions with children, and children are children, so they all have wonderful stories, right? I used to teach kindergarten, and they have magnificent stories they come up with, and there's sometimes truth and sometimes not, and who knows what. But it did seem like that the children believe that the cameras are there to monitor them. And it would be, I would hate to, I would want to make sure that our school community is not misrepresenting what the cameras are. And that the kids know that the cameras are only on after school hours and they're not on during the regular hours. Like, I think we should be upfront and honest with the kids of what the plan is. And I'm not saying that adults were involved in that conversation. It could have just been kids being kids and there's new cameras. And so the assumption is that they're watching their friend who's nodding now, who knows, right? But I do think it would be nice to be able to tell the parents and or the kids, the cameras are not on during the day. They're not there to monitor your behavior. They're not there to make sure you're in line in the hall. And just that we're upfront and honest with the kids about why the cameras are there.
So I did not know that was what was being told to the students. So I will definitely have to.
I don't know if it's being told to the
No,
students.
I know, but I did not know that was the conversation amongst the
Right.
children. And
Yes.
so I would need some time to go back. I will say that two things. Our IS director, we sent out a call to confirm, but he can access the server from his laptop. So he may not necessarily need to be on campus, but it's not cloud-based where all of the stuff is stored to the cloud. It's stored on the server, but he can access the server from his devices. And then you said something prior to him accessing the server. You asked about the time. I'm definitely going to confirm the time. I believe it's around 3, but I asked them to think, so I could say this to ask the team to clarify for me. I'm trying to get the information. So yes, okay. So he can connect via VPN, that only he can connect to, and it's available from the network, not the internet. So he has to be tapped into our network, which the server is connected to, and also through the VPN and the networking. So it's not cloud-based. And I believe it's after 3 p.m., but I want to confirm it's not after 3 or 5 p.m., but I think it's after 3 p.m. when our staff and everyone else leaves. But I will confirm that time for the school committee. And I will also work on the other issue in determining what the students were told or telling themselves.
Right,
Like-
yeah, no, totally. I'm not like saying it was adults.
Yes.
Kids are like, they come up with their own thing if they're not told a message, right?
Correct.
Sarah Hess?
Nope.
Okay.
I do have one question about choice.
Woohoo?
For choice, the choice, this is kind of, it's affecting our current Pelham students. So the kids that are currently in 6th grade are, I guess I want to advocate for them to make sure that the region really understands that there's going to be more choice seats. Possibly, because we're not going to have kids that are automatically rolled in. So like if we had choice seats, normally the region would have, say, 3 for the grade, but they had like 12 kids that automatically rolled in from the towns. They would just need to be reflective of, this is the first year that we've had kids not automatically rolled in. So you may have to open up more choice seats than you would have in the past.
Marta began that conversation with all principals. She's been deep in that conversation. I believe that she has already, like she shared with me, that she already started telling them to account for their seats. And so once she tells me it's time to step in and deal with that on a different level, I will, but she's been taking the bull by the horns for
Dr. Z, I would also say, if I may,
yes.
that there are not that many. When we did the outreach for the individual letters, which we did on February 5th,
Thank you.
yeah, we there were not that many, and I'm happy to provide the specific numbers. I just don't have them with me, but it's probably about 4 or 5 at Pelham, and then between Leverett and Shutesbury, they're less than 10. So we're not talking about a large number, but I'm happy to provide those numbers.
Thank you, Marta. Okay. I think we're ready to move on to the budget vote.
Awesome. Do we present first?
One more comment, sorry. I apologize. On the choice thing that we had asked, you had mentioned that teachers might be going out and we would need subs. Have we thought about tasking, and I don't know if it's called I had PTA. The PTO, have we thought about tasking parents that could take materials and go out to other preschools or other determined locations and do it instead of the teachers?
So I believe that I've asked, Mickey said yes, and I will also say that my team is going to reach out to the PTO to set up a meeting with my office and them. I think that there's some misconceptions that need to be clarified, as well as probably talking about how do we adequately partner. I think a lot of initiatives sound really great. Some of them as a district we're able to support quickly, and some of them take additional time, clearances, and resources. And not because we have to walk within the lines of guidance and compliance means that we don't want to do it. So Mickey said yes, she's saying yes. And we're going to reach out to the PTO to kind of have a conversation.
And I would say reach out to the school committee too, if you need volunteers for that.
Awesome sauce.
To reach out to different venues, or if you tell us where to go, we can do that.
Okay, I think one of the first things that we'll do is share with you our April 18th flyer. It should be, if it's not on our social media, it should be on our social media pages. And so one of the key things too is everybody has their own followings. Like please share it. And then we'll definitely send that over to you so that you guys can share that too as well. Because it will help for the open house.
And Dr. Z, we sent the Pelham and the Amherst flyer to every single preschool, every single in our listserv. So we sent both to all Amherst and in surrounding towns. So just wanted people to know that we did send both.
And reach out to real estate agent offices too. Or people that are relocating that are going to a different town that they may not like the schools.
Got it. Didn't think about that. So we definitely will send it to you then.
Can't send kids to different schools.
No, you can, no, for choice. You can promote. They can choice in, fill out the application. That's not illegal.
Okay. We will move on to the budget now. So we have to have a vote tonight. We have to send something to the town for tomorrow. So we need to proceed with that. So I guess Shannon, I'm gonna ask you to start out.
1 second, just for a clarifying statement, cameras that aren't viewing the exterior doors are off from 7:30 to 4, Monday to Friday. So they do not come on until, the internal cameras do not come on until after 4 p.m. And then I'll get the additional information for you.
Thank you,
Can
Dr. Z.
you clarify something?
Yes,
So we got the budget document and then we got this memo about the capital.
yes,
Are those two steps?
yes. So
So,
two separate
so the
things.
school budget is gonna go to the town and this request for capital support is separate from that.
Yes, but they both go to the town.
They both go to the town, but one is not
Yes.
folded into the other.
Capital is always a separate thing
Okay.
from the operating budget.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah. Okay, Shannon.
Okay, good evening. I will share my screen and I'm gonna talk through this. And I don't know where, I can't see, oh, I don't know where everybody went. I know you're still here.
We're here, Shannon. Keep talking. We can see you. Smile.
I know, but I like to see you all when I'm talking. Oh, show webinar. There we go. Okay, so where we left off at the end of our last meeting was a request of 3 scenarios. And in all 3 scenarios, there was a request to increase the share of the funds from the town by 1.25%. And there was a request that in one scenario, we include the addition of additional days for the clerical person within Pelham Now that was presented at the budget hearing. There, in another scenario, it was asked to remove that from it. And then a third scenario was requested of the current person at Amherst being split to do a portion of the registration work and what that would look like. So it got a little complicated from then to now. One of the major changes that I want to share with you tonight is the second charter student that is enrolled at a charter school, which is also a sibling to the current charter student in FY26. And so this information, normally we get an estimate. It comes out on the cherry sheet by the department or the DOR. And then we get pre-enrollment numbers based off of that cherry sheet that we could use to build the budget. I don't use those numbers because they're just estimates and one student has a major impact. And so normally I wait until January to find out the actual enrollment. That's when those numbers are normally out for the current year. And that's what I would use for the projection of the following or the upcoming year. So that information, like I said, is normally in January. It was not posted in January. I reached out to the charter contact at DESI for this information. She was hopeful that it would be end of January. They changed their system from the DESI security portal to CHAMP. I had to wait for that to roll out, and she did add me as a test person, but I could not see all 3 districts. And so needless to say, it just took a long time before I was able to see the actual enrollment for FY26 to know that there's a second person, which I did receive that information from the last meeting to now. And also they rolled out the pre-enrollment April 1st for FY27. So we do have 2 charter students that are attending charter for FY26. The first year that a student goes to charter, the tuition is 100% reimbursed. The second year, it is only 60% reimbursed, and the third year, 40%. And then after that, you have to cover the full cost, and there is no reimbursement. So for FY26, it ends up being a wash because we're getting 100% reimbursement. However, for FY27, we would only receive 60% reimbursement. So with this information, knowing that there's a second student, I updated the other programs line within the budget to ensure that we're accounting for that moving forward. So that's the change from what I presented last time to now. So now I just want to walk through the different scenarios that are outlined here, and they get a little confusing. So I'm going to start.
And I just, Shannon, is there a place where the charter reimbursement shows up on the budgets?
No, because it goes directly to the town and it does not come directly to the school. And so then the town gets it and then they can allocate it to the school. Ken is the
Okay, we
keyword.
see the amounts of spending. As we go through, can you help us understand? We can see the amount of spending, so it seems really critical to know the amounts of reimbursement.
So I'm going to ask that if we could walk through and then each one, and if we could just write the questions down, because I think that we'll end up, I don't want us to end up through a rabbit hole and not intentionally, but when it
Sure.
comes to charter and funding, we might end up off in different areas. So if we could write down all of our questions, get through the budget scenarios, and then come back. Because in terms of the charter reimbursement, that's a different form that DESI sends out. So we can talk about that process, but I think for the intent of right now to go through the budget scenarios, write down our questions, and then we can get back to them and determine how we do it best. That's my suggestion.
And I could talk a little bit about how charter is billed and assessed at that point too. So the first scenario is budget scenario 1A, and this is a 1.25% increase over FY26, and it includes the additional days for the clerical position that we discussed at the budget hearing. And I had accounted for in other programs the increase for the charter student. So this budget would mean an additional 128,000 of school choice funds would need to be used in order to bridge the gap. And so I left that choice highlighted here. It's a total of $628,824. We were already planning to use $500,000 to support the budget, and then at the request to use additional choice funds to bridge the gap, it would be $128,000 and some change more. You see down here, this is when I had spoken with the town previously last year, they said they would cover some of the charter reimbursement, and in FY27 as presented in the budget hearing and prior budget documents, we still have the $35,000 to cover charter here. So that's budget scenario 1A, and there's a 1B, and I want to let you know down here at the bottom, this 2.8 million, actually I should say the full number, 2,880,851 is going to be the same bottom number for budget scenario 1B. That's why they're labeled 1A and 1B. So I'd like to come back to this one after I finish what was originally requested to present and move to budget scenario 2, which was to not include the $6,000 for the clerical support. Still have the 1.25% increase over FY 26, and it has the accounted for increase in charter under other programs, and still the same charter amount that the town could allocate in free cash. This budget would require an additional $122,445 in school choice to bridge that gap. It's less than budget scenario 1A because there is no registration happening within this budget or being paid for from this budget. In budget scenario 3, this is a 1.25% increase over FY 26. It accounts for the charter again, and it accounts for $132,445 of school choice. I was asked to put together the scenario of how much the current person at Amherst salary would be to do the Pelham registration. And after it sounded simple in the meeting, but then when we come back and we start doing the work, that we have to account for the fringe of that person, like we do with all split district staff, but also the charge of the clerical position for the additional days was not just registration. It was also to work on outreach, and it was a larger scope than just the registration. So with that, we would have to either utilize the current person in that role, which right now does not do outreach for school. Actually, we don't have a person that does outreach. So in order to account for that, we have to add that role to someone's job. And if it's a unionized person or a committee action person, it has to be negotiated, and some additional pay would be associated with that. So we used an estimate of $6,900 to $10,000, depending on how that would land, which it's just a placeholder at this moment. We use the high end to be cautious. It could end up lower depending on how that would roll out. And so that's why this budget requires $132,445 additional in school choice in order to bridge that gap, accounting for a potential up to $10,000 for that clerical split role. So that's where we landed with what we discussed at the last meeting. I want to bring us back up to budget scenario 1B. And this one is different and was not requested at the school committee meeting, but it was something that Margaret and I had spoken about, was to knowing that this charter, additional charter student was enrolled, would the town increase the amount for the reimbursement? We would not have the increase of the 1.25%. And the original clerical position of additional hours that was presented at the budget hearing is accounted for, and of course the additional charter expense is accounted for in this budget. So the bottom line is 2.8 million. It's still the same amount as the budget scenario 1A. But it only accounts for $116,375 additional in school choice funds when you look at the funding sources in this format, as opposed to one budget scenario 1A, if you're following me. I know it gets a little confusing. So that's where we are. And if I will take questions on this, I'm sure there's some clarifying things.
Yeah, I would like to see this in the room, so can you stop sharing?
Yes.
Jenny has a question?
I'm just trying to understand, so budget 1B would be, instead of asking for the 1.25% increase, we would be asking for more reimbursement of the charter students. That's what that's.
Free cash from the town.
So we'd be asking for free cash from the town. And
At 70,000.
at 70,000, and then that would mean that we didn't spend as much out of the school choice funds? That's
Correct.
Okay. So with these other scenarios where. So if we do ask for the 1.25% increase. Is that coming from the town or is that increasing the amount of school choice funds we're having to use?
Go ahead, Shannon.
The 1.25 would be an increase from the town. But at that, we only had 35,000 that was going to be applied from the town from free cash for charter. And I'm not sure that they would consider the 1.25 and the 70,000 for free cash, and if that's something that they'd be able to do.
So it's one or the other is what we're looking at.
Well, it's whatever we vote, but
Okay.
I asked to have that additional option when we found out about the second school choice student.
Gotcha, okay.
Because I thought we didn't present something tonight, we had no option to consider it, so.
Thank you, Margaret.
But I want to expand that it gives the town the flexibility of where it comes from in terms of the 1.25 versus the 70, and this is under an assumption, right? The assumption is that if we voted the 1.25, that the assumption is that they would give the 35 because they did it last year from free cash. This now gives them the flexibility of giving us the 70 from free cash. It reduces our the amount of school choice we would be expending, which is really good for us to keep a contingency behind. And the great part is the way how it's laid out here, 1A and 1B really is the same and like the same bottom line. So what ends up happening is it gives the town also some flexibility in how they apply the funding to us, but we still get to have a level of savings on our end.
Other people can go first.
Sarah Bess.
So, okay. I'm sorry, I don't have a computer. It's it's somewhere not with me. So okay, so in one is number 3, the budget presented was number 3, the only one that keeps the registration joined with Amherst. Or am I reading something?
Yeah, that's, I read no.
Yes.
Sorry.
3 has everything in it.
Yes.
Two is the one that has the clerical taken out of it, I believe.
But 3 is the only one that keeps registration centralized.
So budget number 3, and Shannon explained it. Budget number 3 is the one where we were asked to have the registrar, the current Amherst registrar, split the role of registration and outreach.
And do outreach, which is not currently part of their, would that outreach,
It's not currently part of
Yes.
anyone's duty.
what?
It's not part of-
Outreach is not currently part of anyone's specific duty.
Right. So number 3 is the only budget option that keeps the registration together with Amherst. And then also adds outreach to it. Budgets 1A, 1B, and 2 have Pelham doing its own registration or none.
Budget 1 has Pelham doing its own registration, and so budget 1, which is 1A, 1B, right?
Okay,
So I'm looking at budget 1.
Yep.
Has Pelham doing its
Yeah.
own registration and outreach. And so and by itself, and then that's it. Budget 2, Shannon, correct me, does not, because we were asked to present a scenario where it's not there. So budget 2, no one is doing registration or outreach in budget 2.
okay, that feels, okay. Like, we probably need some registration.
Well,
Right.
it's a scenario that the team was asked to pose.
Yep.
So
No,
budget
that's-
2 has no one.
That's fine.
Well, it says it would be absorbed by current staffing.
Right, Nikki's doing it.
No new, okay. Okay. 1A, sorry, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. 1A, 1.25% increase from the town. 628,000 from choice. 35,000 assuming from charter or reimbursement from the town, and Pelham continues to do its own outreach as it currently stands. Question mark.
Pelham will start doing their own outreach and their own registration, 1A, yes.
That with that has the $6,000 to do it.
Yes.
Or roughly.
That is
Okay.
not what's happening now, though.
Yeah,
yes, I'm just-
nope, I understand that. Okay, and then 1B has,
One
No,
B is exactly the same, it's just different funding in terms of the 1.25% in the charter.
But they both include.
but less
six-
money from choice,
Yes, yes, less money from
Yeah.
choice.
like. A significant amount less from choice. And then 1B has Pelham doing its $6,000 of outreach, registration,
Yes,
okay. And then 2 has
No registration.
no registration. 1.25% increase from the town, $35,000 from charter, and 622,000 used from choice.
yes. Remembering that the 35,000 is an assumption, but yes.
Yep, yes,
But
because that's
yes.
what's been done for many years, right?
Mhm.
Okay, and then 3 is the most expensive budget. Because it has increase and more from like 1.25% increase. 630,000 in choice. And 35% charter, 35,000 in charter and $10,000 to do outreach and keep the registration. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And you're welcome. And we were posed a question as a Margaret sent us a question around this. I think it came from Rachel around the calculations. One of the things is when we post salaries, the fringe was not included, but also there's other back end fringe, for example, longevity or seniority that we have to take into account in these numbers. We also have to take into account that it becomes negotiable because we're adding additional duties. So whereas we would have negotiated in budget scenario 1 with the 6,000 and added these 2 additional duties, we're now expanding someone else's additional duty that's on a higher end of the scale. So there's different things that we had to take into account when we actually presented these numbers.
Okay, thank you.
William?
So. In January or February, I don't remember when it was, Shannon. We were looking at taking out an additional 87,000 from, it was like 587 from the revolving fund. And then I know in the next iteration that we saw, it included like a 20,000, 22,000 iReady piece. And so then that number went up. And then the next time we saw it, it included the yearly expansive of the one position in Pelham. So that was like 6,800 more. Now I understand that we have this additional charter kid, but I still feel like there's like an additional like 12,000 from the last time we saw the budget. Could you point me into what was added?
The only thing I changed was the charter, so I will go and pull up the last meeting to get the bottom line dollar really quick.
And then I guess I wanted to clarify that the 1.25% increase was not increasing our budget, it was increasing the town allocation.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. And then I guess another question I have is, currently this year, or what we had anticipated for next year, was it was gonna be 35,000 for the charter expenses. And the town had kind of talked about doing that in free cash. I feel like I've heard that conversation. Now the cost is going to be 70,000 for the two kids, or is it more than that?
It's estimated at $70,922.
Okay.
Can I pick up there?
Yeah, I think that's all I have for right now.
So I spent some time looking at a couple of the links in the memo that Shannon sent about school choice and learned something that was interesting. So school choice is three pieces, the way they decide. So it is based on your foundation budget, your above foundation spending, and a set amount facilities fee that all schools get charged the same thing. So every district is different, and potentially every year can be different because all of those things change.
Wait, do you mean charter?
Yes, I'm sorry, I said schools, I'm sorry, yes, no, I meant charter, so I just throwing that out there because I found that very interesting, hadn't really delved that far into what's involved in charter, so.
So I was able to find on Desi the anticipated charter tuition payments and anticipated reimbursement. I'm pointing to this because we're talking about potentially asking the town for more money in different buckets. And I wanna point out, as of last week, we were talking about asking the town for what I understood to be 35K, but I believe was actually only around 16K. Cause this link, which I can share with folks, but it's the DOE site, not DESI, sorry. But it's the DOE site that gives a charter summary. It's Pelham's charter summary for projected fiscal year 27 tuition payments and reimbursements. And it says that the anticipated reimbursement is 41,508. So that means that actually with these two students, which they list as 2.2 FTE, I don't know how they come up with that number, but that's what they got. Based on that number, they're saying that we'd actually be, the net district cost is just under 35K. I'm pointing this out because as of last week, I was understanding that the free cash request to the town would be for 35K. I was assuming that was with whatever reimbursement was coming, which I understand now is not the full picture. But with this 70K request, it's actually a request for 35K from the town because they will get back 41 of it. Is that understanding correct, Shannon?
I'm not sure I'm following completely. So originally we had 35,000 and now we have 70,000 in budget scenario 1B. So are you saying that increase is only 35?
I'm saying it's a 70K request, but they'd get back almost 42 of it.
Yes. So I will say this. So the first 6 months of reimbursement is an estimate based off of the cherry sheet information. And then once the charter school submits enrollment to the state, they then adjust the student's FTE and adjust what that billing is to accurate numbers. So depending on when the student starts, how many days have they attended, that changes. So we're getting very specific because it's only 2 students. Normally we don't look at it that specific because there's normally more students. So yeah, there is a slight variation from what's on there versus here. And
well, it's not a slight variation, it's half the cost. Like the
no,
amount we get back is.
Oh, so are you saying that in budget scenario 1A, 2, and 3 should have 70,000 and not 35,000? Is that what
I'm saying that of that? I'm saying that I think it would be valuable for us to see what that reimbursement line is, so that we see what the true cost is. Because if it's 70,000 and they're getting back 40, I think it's important for us, like when we're looking at these totals that Cerebus read out, we're talking about increasing our request to the town by, or increasing our school choice application by X dollar amount. But there's actually a big gap in that number is 35K less, which is a really significant number less.
So Shannon, explain this to me and I know and just clarifying. The refund for charter goes to the town, correct?
Correct.
It
Okay,
is not, but as a school district, we will pay the charter expense. So that's why it's built into our expense.
Correct.
When the reimbursement goes back to the town, it is up to the town to determine how that funding is applied moving forward, correct?
Yes.
So for me, it is not the same as school choice, where school choice funds come back to the district, correct? And the school committee then determines how they apply school choice funds. Correct?
Right.
Okay. So in the end, even if we see what that reimbursement is, it is still in the responsibility of the town to determine whether or not they want to apply that to us. And so I get the conversation, but I also think that applying anything outside of our purview to our budget gives us false numbers. That's why
sure.
that's why the conversation is around the assumption of what they did this last year in FY26 and applied free cash. My guessing is because that is probably where the free cash went. Or not, I don't know. I don't know town finances. But what I can say is if they've appropriated last year they did 35, and that's what we did the assumption, and we're saying, okay, now we know our updated numbers that we have to pay 70,992. We're asking them to appropriate at least 70,000, which helps us to at least retain the funds that we do have control over, right? Because we do have control how we spend our school choice funds. And we need to ensure that, because there's a warning on each one of these things. Like there's something that we have clearly outlined in each one of these scenarios from the beginning. Being mindful that we are applying more school choice than we actually get reimbursed and receive this year than we've done any other. That is on every one of our bullets and scenarios from the beginning. And so what we are posing is how do we adequately ensure that we have some level of fiscal sustainability for things that we actually have control of versus what we don't. And I get where you're coming from, Rachel, in terms of understanding the pictures, but I also want to put us back into what do we control in terms of our funding streams.
Yeah,
Can I say something, maybe clarify?
sure.
So I think what Rachel's trying to say is that if we sit here tonight and we ask the town, if we decide to go with 1B, and so we're asking the town to come up with the 70,000 out of their free cash. After they get reimbursed, the town will actually have maybe spent
Under 35.
under 35,000 because they anticipated reimbursement that the town would receive would be 41,000. We're just trying to figure out if that is
I'm sorry. I really want to understand the question, but I feel like we're like in parallel and I'm just not getting it yet. So the assessment charge comes to the school's budget. The revenue goes to the town. So the
Right.
town would receive whatever reimbursement they're entitled to, they receive it. But I guess I'm not understanding the 35-41
So
difference.
I think because I'm trying to follow along. So I think what they're saying, Shannon, is that we're asking for 70, but the town is going to get 41,000 back. And so
And if we're effectively billing the town, if we're adding to our request, the cost of the charter students, which I believe is closer to 76K. But if we're asking the town for that money, then understanding what of that money they're reimbursed for seems very relevant to the conversation about how much money we're asking the town for.
Right. So the second year they would be reimbursed for 60%. Oh, is everything okay?
I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
Sorry, there's someone at the door. Go ahead.
Okay. So one student would be in their second year of charter. They'd be going into first grade next year. So the town would receive 60% reimbursement of the cost. The other student, I believe, is entering the last year of reimbursement. So they would receive 40% of that cost reimbursed.
But the school district pays the full cost, correct?
Correct.
So
Okay. But we're talking about like effectively where we're charging that amount to. That's why I'm.
no, I get it, but I wanted to, like, she didn't state that fact. So I wanted to
Okay.
state that fact. The fact that the school district pays the full cost. So even like understanding what they get back, we're still going to pay out the full amount, even if they get back less of it. So I'm just grateful that we're even willing to pose the 70,000. The bottom line becomes the same in terms of what we're going to receive as a school district.
I'm sending the two of you, Shannon and Dr. Z, the stuff from the spreadsheet that Rachel was talking about, because I actually downloaded the same thing today. Just, I don't know if it'll change.
I think I know what it
but-
is. I know what you're looking at.
Is
Yeah.
part, Dr. Z, I think I just one thing you were just saying clicked. Part of what you're saying also that, so let's say the town gets back half, like 35 for cleaner numbers for a minute. The town, we charged that charter number 70 to the town. They have agreed to pay it. They get back 35. They allocate that 35 to the Pelham Elementary School. We cannot then put it in our choice budget. We've still eaten that amount out of our choice budget. Is that one of the things you're saying?
Can you repeat that a little bit slower for me? Let me walk through these numbers for you.
Yeah. Let me see if I can repeat that more slowly.
Okay.
Sarah Beth nodded her head,
Yeah,
so maybe you
so-
can.
Okay. What choice and charter are two separate entities. Choice money, we decide how, like,
Yeah.
we get our students, we decide how much to use. Charter, we are charged by the charter schools, and then the school pays it, and then because of some other situation that happens over here, the towns are reimbursed to help offset that cost. How much the town gets is dependent on what year of charter school that child is in. That is a separate situation from how high and low the choice revolving fund is. The only people who have any decision making over choice is us. The town could say, we can help support your, so the last few years, Pelham has helped defray the operating budget of the school by paying for the charter students outside of our operating budget. So they are separate things. So however much we choose to use of our choice funds is.
Right, I
Yeah,
understood
okay.
that, but the like where it comes back to is the piece that I think just clicked for me.
So I have a question. So, is it the case that the town could decide not to give us any of the charter reimbursement?
Yes.
Yes. I
And
guess
that's
so.
why we're asking, that's why how we pose budget one is that we pose budget one in a way that the end number, the bottom line, because Pelham posts the bottom line. We posted budget one in a way that the bottom line is the same. And then it depends on how the town, like giving the town that opportunity to us or the school committee the opportunity to work with the town. But I think that budget one, scenario 1A or 1B comes back to the same bottom number.
Yeah,
Jenny?
I saw Sarah Beth's hand
Yes,
first.
Sarah, yes, and then Jenny.
So, okay. In each of these budget scenarios, we are funding our budget slightly differently. Our budget, our.
Oh, it's right here.
Okay.
Which one do you wanna see?
The today,
This is the one thing.
yeah, no, the overall, the one with the grid,
Oh,
Yeah.
this one up here.
yeah, okay. So. Our. Number that goes to the town. Is.
That's not in there.
Is not listed in here, what we're asking for as our town appropriations. Question.
No, that is in there. Like the
In-
total,
Not on the top page.
I'm looking at the top page,
Budget
it says
scenario
budget
summary.
scenario summary,
Oh.
like 1A, school choice,
No.
additional.
no, it's not listed there, but it is listed in below in this.
Okay. Can you-
Which one, yeah.
So if we're looking at them, so the moral of my question is going to be. Which of these budgets, right, because we're asking for roughly the same amount of money. I mean, for us, it's roughly the same amount of money. But the town appropriation is going to be different for them. And then when we build our budget next year for FY 28. I want us to be thoughtful of how we ask for the money, because I don't want to set us up in a position for FY 28 that we're then. Like. Behind from where we. Could be, which is. Probably a thing I only worry about because I sit at the region. And I know last year's, next year's budget is built off of this year's with an increase, so I want to be thoughtful about, the. The numbers we're asking to the town.
I guess I'm not understanding, so
Okay,
what you're saying.
hold on.
Can you point us to the town number?
Round number increase, so on this, what? Right, 1,826,000, is this budget one?
Yeah, it's budget.
Yep.
That's.
Yeah, the 1.25% is an increase of $22,551 in budget scenario 1A, 2, and 3.
Okay, no, hold on, I have to do a second of research before I can.
So,
sorry.
Sarah Beth, if you're asking about which, are you asking about which,
Second from the bottom number in the budget,
can I be heard?
like in the actual. This
We're
is
looking at
1A.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, this is, yeah, that's one.
At the bottom of the budget sheet, right above the yellow.
8, 2, 6.
182, gotcha, okay.
What's?
Yes.
I'm writing out what each of the total town appropriation numbers are on my
So-
screen.
So Sarah Beth, if you look at it, it says budget support. Can you?
Yeah, I found it.
Okay, so but if you're asking, and in my opinion, if you're asking which one of these budgets has the least impact to the town finances year over year, is that what you're asking?
No.
Oh, I mean, sort of, but I
Maybe the
am more thinking about how it will affect our finances for next year. So next year, when we're going to build our budget, right, they're based on appropriations from the town from the previous year.
Correct.
So I want to make sure that when we're discussing and thinking these budget scenarios through, that is another piece that we're taking into consideration. So when we go to build our budget next year, that we're not, because we were able to pull extra from our choice funds this year, that we're not having to double down on that next year in order to build next year's budget in a way that can be sustainable.
So it looks like 1A, 1A, 2, and 3 are
The
identical.
same number, but bottom,
631.
Right,
yeah, yes,
for the town.
yes.
And so scenario B is the only, 1B is the only one that is significantly less that we're asking from the town.
And it's because we'd be asking for more charter coverage.
Right.
This is a.
Yes,
Rachel.
It's one
I have-
3.
You have
And it's
500 spreadsheets, I'm
2,
so happy I'm not sharing your screen.
6.
Oh, no. I also keep watching you type downloads and,
Talking
okay,
about.
type down.
Jenny
110.
has a question.
I have a question too.
But my question
Yeah.
was, okay, so I'm now understanding like scenario 1B. We're asking for less of an increase from the town, but what's not showing up in that number is the 70,000 out of free cash that we'd be asking for. So it essentially is not that different in terms of what the town ends up paying for the schools. If they agree to the 70K. My question is, and this, nobody may be able to answer this, but I'm wondering, like, historically, in terms of how the town looks at these sorts of budgets. Yeah, I have a historical question
A historical question.
that maybe
I'm
you
listening.
and Margaret can answer. I'm just wondering, like, if we were to present, so 1A and 1B, bottom line is the same. The town ends up paying roughly the same amount. Is it an easier sell to the town to say, give us 70K, that's reimbursing us for 2 charter kids, as opposed to saying we want a 1.25% increase, which is somewhat arbitrary? Like, do we think that there is a higher likelihood of them accepting 1B over 1A based on what they have historically done, or do we not really have any way of knowing that?
I think
So-
we're a lot of time at 4 towns meetings.
I'm gonna say probably.
Probably they would be more likely to accept 1B.
Yes,
That's what you posted as.
I mean, so I would, so when you are going to, you're like, hey.
Hey, friends.
Hey, friends. Hit us up, you know? So the warrants are broken down by different items, right? So we will, so for the sake of argument, right? So say we're going to put forth 1B, which I'm not suggesting, just using it as an example. We'll have one warrant article that says blah, 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 legal, $1,804,000 for Pelham Elementary School for operating. And then there'll be other articles, blah, 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 and then they'll get to free cash, and one of the items listed under free cash will say $70,000 to fund charter student outside of the operating budget, which is not really how it says, but that's what it will do, right? And so those things are, they're separate line items.
Yeah.
So in a year where the school budgets, I mean, they're always under very tight scrutiny at 4 towns meetings. It might be slightly easier to have it be less scrutinized, especially because when we're having the conversation is, I mean, I don't know what the budget was from last year, but there is no percent increase if you're talking about it, right? Not that I'm advocating for that, I think actually, if we're gonna start having those discussions, I'm probably advocating slightly against that. Because I worry about our FY28 budget. And
So you think we're better off asking for an increase and having that be
do we?
setting that precedent?
Well, do we know, this is a terrible question, Shannon, and I'm sorry, and if you don't know the answer, that's also totally fine. Do you happen to know what we asked for appropriations for last year? For the
So,
operating
A
budget?
2.5% is normal, what Pelham normally does year over year.
Right, no, I know that. Do you know what the dollar number was from last year?
Yeah, it's on the sheet. So there's the FY26 budget. So it's $1,804 or $1,804.
So it's exactly the same.
Right,
And
1B.
1B is the exact
Yes.
same as last year.
correct.
Yes.
Okay, dollar for dollar. So I don't wanna set that precedent at town meeting. That is, I feel pretty strongly against that, especially, I mean, Pelham School is fantastic. And I don't want there to be, I will speak for myself, any confusion that I think we should do anything besides continuing to have our fantastic little school. And I don't want there to be able to be conversation that says, We didn't give you any more money last year, you figured it out, do it again.
William?
So. I'm gonna go back to my 87,000. And I don't know how we got to the number we're at today. I feel like there's 12,000 I still don't quite understand, but. What I myself, kind of piggybacking on what Sarah Beth was saying. When we had this conversation the last time, I was an advocate for asking for like 1%, 1.1, 1.25. I'm still comfortable with that. I'm also comfortable with advocating for the town to pay for all the cost of the charter kids out of free cash. So I would be advocating for not what we have presented here, but a 1.25% increase on the ask. And asking them to pay the 70,000 or the 76,000, whatever that is, I guess 70,000, asking them to pay the 70,000. Of revolving, of the charter. And in my head, knowing that they're probably gonna get 40,000 back. So we're really asking them to pay like 35 at the end of the day, because we wouldn't expect to get that reimbursement back, they would keep it. And asking them for the 1.25, I would be comfortable with that. And I think the town people would vote for that. And just as I said the last time we were at the meeting, that we shouldn't present a flat budget because I think the town would support us in asking. I think the town will support the 70 and I think the town will support the 1.25. And if the town votes and they don't, we come back to a leveled service budget, which is 112. Which is where we would be anyway if we asked them for no more money. So why not ask?
I just want to say 112 is not level.
Level services or level spending? Level.
It's the same, because we're asking the same amount of money this year we got last year, so it'd be the same even if the stage goes.
That's not level services, that's level spending.
But that's what we're asking for, we're asking for level.
One
spending.
B is level.
So I
Can I
would,
just-
I
You
would,
want one stick.
I want none of that.
Yeah, I think, wait, hold on, alright, I'm not sure, but Shannon is trying to give us information.
Shannon.
Oh, well, no, I wanted to talk about the first piece and I know I figured it out, William. So
Okay.
there's the ad for the charter, but in the budget hearing, we did not have the actual ad of clerical in the salaries line yet. That was an ad outside. So that's the difference that you're seeing.
Okay. So I'm okay with. I'm still not okay with the year-round clip, I'm not quite sure where I land on that, but to pass a budget, the budget I would be willing to stand for would be. To ask the town for 1.25 more than we asked them for last year, and ask them to do the 70,000.
I also want to clarify, 112 budget is not a level service budget. So I do
Yes.
not want that conversation, that statement to go out there and everybody's like,
It's
"Okay,
level funded, but
112
what we're asking, the 112 is asking for, you would get the same amount of money you got last year, which is the same ask we're asking the town for.
to operate under 112."
If we ask for them to give us the same amount of money that they gave us last year, that's the same budget the state would give us, the 112.
Shannon, explain a 112 for me, because my understanding is completely
There's
different.
charter school to pay for. So I think you have to take into consideration what the response may be in terms of recommendation to town meeting.
Oh, I get
as
that.
well.
I think the town people will vote for it, and if not, we come back into a budget. We still have time to come back and do another budget. If the town voted it down. We don't have to go to the state budget till June,
I don't think we have
July?
time unless they call another town meeting.
Then that's up to the town to call another town meeting, not us.
I'm going to say that I'm not comfortable doing that. I understand what you're saying about the 1.25 and raising the base, that's what you're talking about, is raising the base. But I'm not gonna vote for a budget where we're asking for all three of those things. Because we may end up having to fund the charter completely.
Can I have just a clarifying question? You said all three things? What?
To ask for 1.25, 70,000 in charter and capital. No, capital separate. Okay, that's a totally different thing. No,
So two things.
I'm not comfortable asking
For both.
for the 1.25 and, sorry, the 70,000 in charter. Sorry,
Thank you.
Rachel.
Okay. I am wondering, Sarah, Best or Margaret, if you can speak to whether, in terms of historical precedent. I know we have this one example of the town paying for that 35K for the one student. Has that been the precedent? I have to imagine there were years with more than one student. Has that been the precedent?
I don't remember there being more than one student in all of my school committee.
Okay,
I actually remember when the one student was like kind of surprised and we had to
Yes.
like do some
Well,
shuffle to make it happen.
Actually, the town forwent a position and the principal agreed to take
They took some unpaid time off.
several months off in order to cover. Yeah,
okay.
in order to cover the cost, because that's the problem. We don't get that information until so late.
Yeah,
It really causes problems now for us.
I think that was 19.
Yeah, that was just around COVID before. or after
It-
COVID.
I think it was
I think it was
actually before that. I think it might have been before that. I don't know if I was actually on school committee yet. I don't remember it happening, but it was like,
Okay, in those years.
so not more than one, but when the one hit the
Sure.
first time, it was a big difference.
Yeah, okay. Um. I am curious if we can move to voting for one of these budgets, A, and B. As the finance committee has done, I am curious if we could pull out and separate. My proposal would be that we vote in either 1A, 2, or 3. And that we separate the conversation about this additional choice student. And potentially, thank you, this
Yeah.
potential charter student, and potentially make that an additional warrant aside from our budget.
We can't do that, I don't think. They have to have this for tomorrow.
We have to have an operating budget that covers our costs.
Okay,
So how we ask for that can be, like, we still have to cover it.
Does the free
Yeah.
cash go onto the warrant too? The request for
Yes,
free
It
cash?
does.
But so it's separate.
It's separate.
So we would do our budget. And then we would either do a 70,000 ask or not a 70,000 ask from the free cash as a separate warrant.
Yep.
So we,
Well, it's part of a
Please
separate.
please remember, free
Yeah.
cash recommendations come through the finance committee. So
Yeah.
we don't, even if we ask, we don't get to make that recommendation as to what goes on the warrant. So we only get to send them the budget that we voted. They get to determine, and again, they could look at it and said, we can't afford to do 22 and 35. We can't afford to do any of these things. We can just do the 22. We're not doing the 22. Like, I'm going to say this. I understand the need to do what is right for the students, the teachers, and everyone of Pelham. I also understand that this is where the politics hits the road, and I would ask that the school committee act from a place of what is presented in front of you. What are the options? What do you know about the current political structure and climate? What do you know about the financial situation of the town? If you've attended town meetings, you're understanding that you don't even if you ask, there is nothing that puts forth that the finance committee has to move on the recommendation. And so that is why the summary is there. That's why we present the fact that you have to take into account what is going to be the best financially and fiscally responsible decision to make for Pelham Elementary School, knowing that every vote that you make is going to have a potential impact. So if you vote 1A, note that you are voting whatever amount of school choice funds, because we would have to put that forth. There is no guarantee we're getting it back. And the question was asked of Margaret. Margaret, you've attended the most town meetings. Do you think which one do you think would pass? She said 1B because and that's why she asked for us to pose a scenario. I get what we need to do and what we need to do is right. I do not want to be back in a 112 situation. That is not that's not a very good and workable situation. That does not look good for the district or the school committee. But I do feel like let's not make a rash decision. Let's take our time and really work the numbers and determine what will be best for the fiscal sustainability of Pelham Elementary School.
Ask you a question.
Yes.
So if we passed a budget and it wasn't passed to town, how much time would we have then to present another budget to town? Prior to
You
the
have
deadline.
until June 30th to vote for the full budget to be approved by the town.
And they'd have to hold another town meeting.
Yes, they have to.
But what would our time commitment be? Like, do we have the time to do another budget?
No.
The town has to call another town meeting and it has to be approved before June 30th.
Yeah,
So
and
Okay,
And-
I was
and
just saying, does the school committee have the ability to present another budget?
No.
No, because they need 40 days after our presented budget to then pass it.
Here's another place where you gotta think about what's going on in town. It is not inexpensive to call another town meeting. And there typically is a town meeting in October. The second town meeting. The likelihood, in my personal opinion, the likelihood of the town being willing to call another town meeting just to deal with are not getting a budget in place that the town will vote for is not gonna happen. I mean, that's my personal opinion.
and just like I'm just thinking from a operations standpoint, we normally load the budgets once they're voted in Munis ahead of time. And a lot of clerical staff across all of the elementary schools do the ordering for the teachers before the teachers leave. And if that budget isn't within Munis and our clerical person in Pelham right now is not working during the summer, that means their supplies won't be ordered until they come back in August.
It's your best.
So, okay. I think I would like to advocate for budget scenario 2. Because it is the lowest amount from our choice fund. It assumes a $35,000 charter, which the towns already have that information. It does have an increase over last year, so it is not setting a precedent of level funding, which I have some great concerns about. And it does, and it includes no additional registration and outreach. However, it has sounded from the other conversations that we've had today that the committee is willing to do outreach, and that the PTO and the central offices either has or plans to connect with the PTO to coordinate some outreach about choice. So I think that is the budget that satisfies the most needs in the least terrible way.
Are you making a motion? I'm just asking.
If we're ready to make motions, I don't wanna jump the gun if people feel like they still need to talk about it.
Who's doing the registration?
So I have a question.
I just didn't hear what you just said, Dr. Z, I'm sorry.
Who's supposed to do the
Like, who's doing the
registration?
registration? Because outreach and registration are separate, And at our last meeting, Mickey said, if we don't put some money towards that responsibility, that it essentially falls to her.
So is that what's in this?
That's budget 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask, is there a world in which we say budget 2, but we like, well, it's not on this sheet, but essentially we do the 1.25, we do the school choice at 122, but instead of asking a one-time support from the town of 35, we ask a one-time support of 40, which would cover the charter student and some money towards more days for people, for admin to do some of that registration work.
So instead of asking for 35, we ask for 41. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think that's a one-time fee, and I heard from John Tricky that free cash is for a one-time fee.
Okay.
But they do the charter school as a one-time fee.
But that's because the money comes.
Because
That one time it comes
yeah.
back one time, and
Gotcha,
it's not
okay.
always the same.
Okay,
I know you listed a range for budget 3. I'm trying not to scroll so I don't get lost in the document, but I think of 6,800 to 10K. For that central office individual. Similar line to what Sarah Beth was explaining, I think we have a quite activated community here. I am curious if we could drop down budget 3 by that $3,000 difference, but keep to the plan for central office holding registration. So that we are looking at a budget of 629,445. So that Mickey is not individually holding registration, and perhaps the negotiation for that individual doing outreach can be minimized, so that the outreach falls on the school. Shannon, it looks like you're saying something, I'm sorry.
I might defer to Dr. Z, as ultimately she'd be the one working with finding the employee to do X, Y, and Z, and any negotiations.
Can you expand on falling on the school? Because, I mean, what does that mean?
Wait, say the beginning of what you said again, I'm sorry.
Before I respond, you said a part of your statement. I need you to expand or illustrate it for me. What does falling on the school mean?
I think I said falling on Mickey.
No, you said the outreach would fall on the school.
I meant fall on the PTO and the school committee.
So your question for scenario 3 is what would happen if we reduce to the 6,900? That's a preliminary discussion. And like I said earlier, we would be going in and renegotiating with the union around the registration, and you're saying do not include outreach.
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
Okay. My question comes in, right? This was a charge from the full committee. So for me, right now, there are a couple of things that I need to take into consideration, regardless of what we have to negotiate. It may exceed your range of 6,900 because we're not knowing what the additional hours and costs are. I also would like to say that the school committee would then have to ensure that they are not asking us. And I'm going to be operating real different with school committees, because school committee needs to speak in one voice and not individual voices. So that's my thing, my committal moving forward. I'm not coming with these individual voices and concerns anymore. And I really plan to ensure that for the sake and health and well-being of the staff and the individuals, that we move in a way that makes sense for them and for what the school committee goals are. I would say if you are willing to do that at 6,900, why aren't you willing to do 1E? Right? That's one. Two, regardless of what, it depends on the negotiated and the intended scenario for any of these. I have to go back and negotiate with the union. And if they say no, then I have to negotiate with someone else. So if we are removing outreach and you're saying that the PTO and the school committee is completely committed to handling outreach on their own, my concern would be the commitment of two levels of individuals and organizations that have not clarified or stayed. So the school committee, you're saying, yes, you're willing to do outreach. And I also know what does that look like based on what you've asked us to put forth and to do, right? Because majority of you have full-time working jobs and do different things. What's that's going to look like? How is it going to be within any semblance of, and I don't know, maybe you're going to have your own initiative and you work with the school to get it done. I think about currently, since this has happened since January, the impact that it's had on the school in terms of various organizations pushing forward to the school leadership and um around what they feel initiatives are. And a lot of those initiatives fall back on Mickey and the school to get done, to push forward, to send out information, oh, I need this juice parent square, I need this. It still comes back to the school. It's still, so even when you're talking about these organizations want to get it done, the work still filters back through to additional tasks on Mickey, additional tasks on our secretary, additional tasks on central office to research and make sure. So I just want to, I hear what you're asking, but I also want to put the reality of the scope in place, that there's still going to be tasks assigned to current members of staff to get certain things done that is outside of the reach or purview or operation of these organizations. So let's just take that into account. But
Okay, I just want to raise that one of the reasons I'm not in favor of 1A is because one thing we heard from Nikki just a week ago is concern about having someone with expertise in registration continuing to hold registration. And that is not an expertise set that is held within the school. I think that was something I heard and kind of repeated back at the end when I was asking for that scenario to be set up.
okay, hold on. I wasn't here, so I'm gonna ask Mickey to
Sure.
clarify for me, and then I'll expand on it.
I know that we don't have the expertise right now, but I don't know what it entails to get that expertise. I am assuming it's just training from the person who's doing the registration right now, if I'm understanding your question correctly.
You are understanding my question correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, that is training, that is controlling the school choice registration and lottery, that is making sure if tomorrow, let's just say, if tomorrow Pelham decides that they want to do certain things separately and apart, they have the expertise in their district to get it done. And so for me, it's a task, but it's one that we could better track and align that way. In actuality, I think the conversation here and just my suggestion is really looking at the bottom number and what it's going to task in to get to do it. So we would be adding in our negotiations with the union, we would be saying that we want to increase this person's number of days to add these two additional tasks to their duties, right? We want to add registration. It's not a large school district. Usually, like, we would probably end up registering what, 20, 30 students, right? So it's not like we're doing that, and we want to add outreach. This is a task where this person is already working throughout the school year on certain things. They're already developing those flyers. They're already reaching out. They're working closely with the administration to do those certain things. So in all analytical logic, you would want to, if we are now adding these two tasks, we would negotiate with the union to add these days to the person, the clerical at the site, to expand on their time frame so they could add the additional load of registering about 30 students, about doing those, sending out these flyers, working on outreach, making additional phone calls. I want to honor the depth and breadth of what the school committee as well as the community has expressed in terms of advertising and pushing forward Pelham, and that's why we put forth these things in a way that we think made sense. Instead of having to split out, because if you're adding registration to the registrar, and we're still gonna have to go back and just negotiate because we can't do anything with the union. We don't side deal, we go straight to them and we talk about those positions. And I would have to say that there's still a level of duties that are going to fall back on the school, even if outreach is handled by outside organizations.
William?
I was gonna say, I don't know if you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I was wondering if we could have Marta or Mickey comment on the registration and the outreach process, as I feel they're probably more in tune with what the work is, because it falls underneath Marta's family engagement stuff, and with Mickey having the experience here at the school, if they're comfortable sharing, like, out of these budgets, one is in keeping it in Pelham, right? And expanding the duties for workers in Pelham, and the other is using a registrar who would be working for all three districts. Is there a preference between those? For people who I would see as the experts in that field, which would be Mickey and Marta?
No, William, you could have just said Dr. Z. I don't think you know. I want to hear from you.
No, I'm not saying you know.
No,
No,
that was just a nice way of saying that. I mean, let's
That's totally not what I'm saying.
Jacket. So I'll let Marta jump in. Marta, go right ahead.
Well, I think this is kind of like a tricky question. I mean, the work has to be done. The work is complex. The work entails a lot. And then on top of that, I think there's some folks have the perception, I respect it, but that there needs to be outreach or some special plan of outreach to bring more, school choice students to Pelham. So we personally have not done, the only outreach that we do is in conversations, in communication with with all of the preschools, with the different towns. We do social media, because we're in all, Seth does that. Like, we have the flyers and the letters, and he supports us in sharing those. But in terms of, and then we do an ad in the paper. But in terms of doing specific outreach to attract students, we have not had to do that. I think that historically we have had, more interest than not in the slots that are available, I believe. And through the way we have done it, in which, and you discussed that already, in which Pelham was, families with choice in and check off all of the schools that were available. And the majority of the families who come to us wanting school choice are for Amherst. I'm not putting it out there as a competition. I'm not saying once the schools are better or not. It's just how it is. And so historically, Pelham has benefited from that arrangement, because a lot more families who had initially just wanted Amherst, through our conversations, through our meetings, and through our explanation of how great Pelham is, right? They've benefited from extra slots. So when we talk about outreach, I just don't, I just don't see a scenario of how we can gather a lot more slots through doing this comprehensive outreach.
I have to say, Marta, I think y'all have done a great job with the outreach to the schools over the years. And so I don't want to, like, I don't know how that process works, and I don't want to derail the process if the people that are doing the work feels like it's working. And I'm hearing from you, Marta, that you feel like it's working for the best of Pelham the way it's been over the years, is what I'm hearing.
I believe that Pelham has greatly benefited from this partnership. I mean, when people were talking about percentage of each of us, and who get paid a percentage from Pelham, etc. It is all the intersectionality of this has been a beautiful thing in the ways we've done it. The issue is that we've done some changes, right? We used to have just one registrar. We used to have an elementary registrar. We've combined both positions. And as it pertains to the work that how it's been done, right? We have continued to do the work for Pelham without any compensation, but we do it equally with the same effort and the same enthusiasm. I said to Margaret the other day when we spoke, I have a very special place in my heart for Pelham. My granddaughter went to Pelham preschool. I love everything about Pelham, have some of my best friends there. So, you know, we treat Pelham just like we do all the other schools. So for me, it's what the school committee, what I have heard is that you all wanted a bigger plan for outreach, you know, and that's what I wasn't understanding, you know, because I just don't see what else can be done. I mean, would a visit to a preschool rather than a flyer and conversations or the invitation for people to come over be better? It could be. I don't know the numbers of people that would benefit, you know. The other aspect is, you know, opening the other thing I wanted to share was opening the slot, you know, opening the application date, you know, the date to open applications may be something that we can contemplate, you know. It doesn't mean that we will be able to make decisions, but you know, if there is anxiety about perhaps we should begin taking requests and applications for school choice earlier for Pelham, you know, or not, that's something that we can engage. We can have that conversation. But it is the case that we only have one IS group and the different portals, right, that we open and the way they support us is complicated as well. So I just want to say that it isn't as simple as we open it up and we accept it. No, because we're storing grades currently at the end of the year. We're enrolling new students. We're enrolling kindergarten students, and we open choice. So there is a lot at play here. And I appreciate bringing the conversation, but um, I can't tell you what the preference is. I'm willing to have a conversation, but anything would entail more money, I would say.
Okay, Mickey, were you gonna say anything?
Did you say me?
Like, do you think Marta said
Um,
everything?
I think what Marta said, I agree with a lot of it. I will say when we last met, there was a lot of pressure, outside pressure to do more outreach, and my brain didn't know what that meant. And so, like, yeah, if someone else had ideas and everything, I would be open to them. Because as Dr. Z and Marta has said, a lot of it does fall on us to do the outreach, like the open house, we're advertising, I put it together, I dedicate a Saturday morning to it. And I get, what do we call them? Anyways, we get students to come in and have them tour around the families and stuff like that. But I too am flexible with how it moves forward and want to make sure that we're doing it in the right way.
Okay, I have Sarah Bess and then Jen.
Okay. All right, so thank you, Dr. Z, for that before. My comment wasn't about no registration. I actually think registration should stay where it is. I think it is good for Pelham to be have registration and for kindergarten and for choice. with Amherst, because Amherst is a much bigger name that people recognize as opposed to Pelham. So I think we get some residual benefit there, so it wasn't a, no, we don't want any registration or outreach anymore, it was more, I don't want it to change. I wanted to stay with Amherst. So if I'm looking at these budget scenarios, right? 1B doesn't work for me because there's no increase over our base number from last year. 2, sounds like it does not work logistically for the districts because of the choice and kindergarten registration and outreach piece. So that leaves us with 1A and 3. So 1A has Pelham doing its own registration and outreach, which I think is not, this is not a comment about anybody who would do the Pelham registration and outreach. But I think it is better left with Amherst, which leaves us with 3. And while it is most expensive,
Not that.
not by,
$4,000.
right, not by a ton, and I think that is one choice student, and that feels like something that feels like money well spent to keep it there. And if when we're having the conversations, Dr. Z, and you're going back to have the conversation with the union and the person who would do the registration for Pelham, it sounds like there could potentially be less of the outreach part, because it sounds like the outreach is, I think perhaps I will speak for myself, that we didn't understand how the outreach worked, so it felt like because we didn't understand it, maybe it wasn't happening, which sounds like we were just wrong. I was wrong. So I think I am in support of budget number 3, which I know is not what I said before, but after having this conversation and hearing some more information, which I am really glad that we have been able to have such a long conversation about all of this. That feels like the best budget to me, and that $10,000, what I'm understanding, sounds like a placeholder and not necessarily a final number. So could potentially be $4,000 less.
But a placeholder and the maximum,
Okay.
yes?
A placeholder at the max, right? That's how that's being presented, a max placeholder. So
may I ask you a question?
ooh, sure, ask away.
So I'm confused now because you said you feel like registration and school choice ought to stay where they are.
Right.
And yet budget 3 has that in it.
Yes, but that is for Amherst to continue doing that registration.
That's what
That does
districts to do
Stay
it.
where it is.
So it stays where.
But it now, Pelham is now paying for it as we should have been,
All right.
is how I, kind of how I see that.
All right.
It's a service that we.
And
for
we
it.
ask for $35,000 in free cash from the town.
And 1.25.
And out of that 1.25, we pay the additional
The other
charter
charge
school
students.
expense.
Yes. Because it increases our base budget, so
Yeah.
next year, so we don't have to have someone say to us when we're building our FY28 budget, you figured it out last year without any more money from the town, do it again. Because I feel like that could be a real
Yeah.
conversation, and I don't want to set a precedent that says we'll do it ourselves, right? Like, we are educating all of our students and children, we should, we do a good job, let's help support, do a good job.
I also would support 3 because I think it is kind of splitting the difference. I think we are, in fact, we have to pay more for these registration services one way or the other, and so we are accounting for that. But we're also not saying, and we want you to pay the full freight of the second charter student. The one thing I would hope could happen is that if it turns out that we don't end up paying that $10,000, we end up paying closer to like the 6,800, that difference could be applied to like using less of our school choice money.
Well, that, that would be a decision that would be made. later. I mean, yeah.
But I mean, like, if we
Yeah.
ask the school for the town for the whole amount and the town says, yep, you can have the whole amount. Then we're not giving them back the money if it costs less than 10,000, but we could end up
Right.
pulling less from our school choice.
Right.
The only one who can
No, you're fine. So. On. Budget 3. On. The idea of keeping it or moving it to Pelham, the registration and outreach and all that, or keeping it at a district office. My perception would be that, like, if I'm gonna have my hip replaced, I'm gonna go to someone who does it 70 times a year and not someone who does it 20 times a year. So I think that if we house it in Pelham, the person's going to be registering someone 20 times a year. Where if we move it to the district office or keep it at the district office, they're gonna be doing it 100 times a year. So I don't think it's because I don't think Pelham can do the work. I think it's just smarter to have it fall underneath someone who does it a lot more often. So they get better at the process. So I don't think it's a reflection of Pelham not being able to do it. I think it just makes more sense to have someone do it more often, which is why we have, I think, a central office and why we have shared services, because it gets done. I wouldn't say better, but I think better. Anyway, it gets done better.
Spillover effect
Right,
too. Of
correct.
like,
So I'm in favor of budget 3. I guess I wanna ask. Maybe this was Shannon, or maybe it was Dr. Z, I can't remember, but. Our request. For the town to pull the 35,000 out of free cash. How is that request presented? Because. I heard tonight that. That request may not be honored, or it might be honored. So how, is there a possibility for us to present budget 3, but. Or to pass budget 3, but also ask for 70,000. In a separate request? And could those be, are those 2 different warrant items where one can be voted up and one can be voted down?
So you're saying we could ask the town for 2 different things. We could ask them for 35 and then we could also ask them for 70.
Well, I don't understand how we're asking.
Items under free cash warrant.
If I don't understand how the request for free cash gets made. Because in all these other budgets, it's assumed that they're gonna pay the 35,000, and if we don't. Like, how are we actually putting that request in versus the 70,000? I'm just asking for process.
So last year, and I'll hand it over to Shannon, it happened, we consult with the town and the finance committee around different things. And so one of the things that comes up is the cost for charter. Shannon, you want to expand?
Yeah, so last year we just voted the total bottom line budget with the understanding that I had the conversation with people from the town and hey, do you think you could cover this from charter? They said yes, we built it into the budget, we voted the budget, they see the sheet. But it wasn't formally written out in specific language. And this is the first time in a few years in 26 that we had to budget for charter.
So. Did our budget that we voted last year, the budget that we approved, did it have the town paying for the 35,000 within the budget?
26,742, yeah.
Okay. So that was baked into the numbers already.
So if you look at any scenario on there in FY26, you can see exactly how it was presented, the total budget and then the budget support. And it was broken out just like
It's a town to cover charter.
yeah.
Okay.
And so that would be how we would request. What we want to request for charter.
Yeah, I guess there's the option to make it, I mean, this year feels a little bit different than last year. So I guess there's the option to formalize it in the voting language that you choose to use. And not just be, we're voting the bottom line budget of 2.8 million for FY27. It could be move to approve a budget of 2.8 million with XYZ coming from charter. Oh, go ahead.
I don't think we can tell someone else how to fund our budget.
No,
We can tell them where their money has to come from.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that, and the thing that I wanted to say is, again, what Shannon said was the 26,742 came from, again, in our consultations and conversations around the charter costs and those things, and it was a simple ask from the district, like, do you think, like, this is our budget, we can't push any more, do you think you can cover this? And it became a recommendation and a warrant for free cash. The same conversation kind of happened this year. We asked, hey, can you cover the 70? Like, that was the push. Like, the push was like, can you cover the 70? We were not giving any guarantees that we could cover the 70 or not cover the 70. We didn't go in on the 35. That's why everything says this is an assumption. We went in asking, do you think you can cover the 70? We were not said yes, no, and because the whole FinCom has to vote on what that is. For us, we created, based on the knowledge and what we're asked to do, we created the scenarios where the assumption is there when we send forth this budget, they'll see just like they saw last year, where we have the assumption of what they may or may not cost. They may not even cover the 35, right? Like they may say, well, if we're going to appropriate this to the full budget and looking longevity wise, they may not do the 35. Free cash is a one-time cost. And it doesn't affect under operating the way it does. And so for me, what I'm hearing from the school committee is we don't want to level, right? We don't want to walk in there and level off. But now we also want to be able to tell them, like to say we want this additional request, knowing that it's coming from the same town and we may end up losing altogether. So I would be very mindful of how we put forth that request. And for me, I look at it as 57 versus 70, right? Like, am I asking for the 1.25, which is 22,035 versus 70, which 70 is all about the pot of money that the town pays out of. That's what we're asking for. And the pot of money is is there. So
Rachel.
Yeah. Okay, coming back to some of my initial questions. If we are to pay this 35, who might discuss with the town, when they receive back money for charter students, would they allot half of that to the elementary school? Is everyone following my question?
yeah, so who would go to the town and say, hey, if we pay the 70,000, can you give us back, if you get back 80, can you give us 40?
Yeah, or if we pay the 35 this year, which is what I think these budgets are showing, them paying 35, us paying 35. Yes?
The three of the scenarios, one scenario has them paying 70 and we pay $992, yes.
Right. So it sounds like a lot of us are settling on scenario 3, which has us paying 35, town paying 35.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they get back 20 for each of those two students. Hey, town, will you reallocate 20K back to Pelham Elementary School? Can that conversation be had? That seems significant to me in this now.
Well, it can't be had before tomorrow.
I understand.
You can go in and
that seems like a reasonable assumption perhaps for us to be running on when we're looking at these numbers, that potentially we're looking at a slightly lower total for our budget after that comes in.
I'm gonna put another thought in here, which is there are, they're asking level spending for all the departments. And the departments all reduced their budgets to incorporate the COLAs and step increases. And the town is now onto the free cash warrant to put back that money in some of the departments. So some of the departments are going to stay level funded. And that total comes to $18,000, just over $18,000. So I feel like then going back later to the town and saying, oh, by the way, could, Would you give us back some more of that money that came into free cash? When they've given us the 1.25 is. I don't know,
They're gonna get back more money than they spend, like they're gonna get like 48, 46, but only spend 35. Okay, but they're gonna get back more money than they spend, so it seems like
$6,000.
okay.
So you're saying split the $6,000? Give up,
No, I'm saying split the, like they'd be getting that 41,
right?
because because that's the amount for 2 students, but they're only covering the cost of 1 student,
Which is
35.
right.
So let's make that even numbers. They're covering 35, they're getting back 20 for that 1 student. I know it's not exactly even
No,
numbers, but
it's not. I mean, no, it isn't. But, okay,
I don't think we can vote on a budget with this
No.
like totally hypothetical
No.
scenario, though.
no, I agree.
okay,
I think,
I also think we need to sort of see how things play out at the town meeting, and we'll like end with this like committee work, and I feel like that's something we can discuss maybe down the road.
yeah, the committee work is for like 10 years down. The reason I'm harping on this number though is because we're looking at a difference between 1B and the rest of them of 22K, which is like that number that I'm talking about. And so it seems like as we make this vote to have a plan for that conversation of how the town will plan to use this money that they know is coming back. Like this is guaranteed money that is coming back to the town. What's their plan for using that? Seems like very good information for us as we move forward. I know it will not impact the vote tonight, but seems like an important conversation now.
that's there, yes.
So I think two pieces, like our town has. Since we've had, in my history, since we've had a charter student, they have funded it outside of the budget, and so. To me, it feels like they do that already, they
Yeah.
have a charter student, we have a charter student, the reimbursement goes back to them, and then they fund it again through there.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like they're doing that
Okay.
cycle already. We'll also say that if you come to town meeting with a written amendment, you can change whatever you want on the warrants. So if we vote to pass a budget that says whatever, number 3, and which requests like a 1.25% increase. And a request for $35,000 to cover a charter student if we get to town meeting. And we can say, I have an amendment that says, to change that request from free cash from 35 to 70, like that is a thing that not just us, like any member of the town can do on the floor of town meeting. So I hear what we need a budget, and we need a budget that will not only pass for us, but we need a budget that will pass at town meeting. And I want to be cautious about part of, one of the points that Shannon brought up, that a lot of what happens in that. So when we look at our Q1 budget, we have that conversation, a lot of things in there are very heavy. So like the facilities number is really heavy, there's a lot of supplies numbers that are really heavy, because all of those funds are encumbered in Q1, which if we don't have a budget, we don't have money to do that in Q1, so all of those, it pushes things off, it makes things a lot harder. So if we're ready, and my neighbor here doesn't mind sharing his computer, I am ready to make a motion for budget scenario 3.
Okay, you see the motion at the top, the motion language.
I mean, yep, I just don't have a computer today for that.
I got a piece of paper.
Could we
Want a piece of
change-
paper?
If we felt like the 70,000 wouldn't go, could we change it to 35?
It is
on the
35.
floor? No, but could we?
Oh,
Could
I
we
don't know.
pass a motion can we pass a budget tonight that includes scenario 3 and asking town for 70,000, and then we could change it on the floor if need be?
I will not vote for that. I only feel it feels funny.
Oh.
Where's the motion?
So that. Alright. It's just just this first line, I will move, proposed motion, or I move to approve budget scenario 3 and move to adopt a total budget of $2,884,472 for FY 27 for the Pelham Elementary School budget. I don't need to read any of this other stuff, correct, Shannon? Okay.
I second.
Discussion, more discussion, any more, going once. All those in favor?
I look forward to your amendment on the floor.
All those opposed, okay, it passes 4 in favor, 1 nay. Okay,
I do support budget 3, it's just the allocation of the 70,000.
yeah, I got
I
it.
do support budget 3. I support budget 3.
Is that, William?
I support it. Publicly.
Okay, so there is another item on here which says committee goals.
Oh, we
the
can do that.
capital.
Capital.
I lost my internet connection too. Okay, all right, so I am just going, I don't have motion language for that. Is it in the?
There isn't a motion language, there isn't, no.
Yeah, I didn't add motion language to this. I think the motion would be moved to approve the memo as presented.
Okay, I move to approve the memo of April 7th. Asking for, I believe, $19,000 in capital spending.
Second. 19,000.
Any discussion about that? No, okay, all those in favor? That passes 5-0, thank you. Thank you for keeping me on track, I always seem to get lost. I lost my internet.
Committee
connection.
goals.
I can't, yeah, so I have nothing under committee goals. I have spent so much time this month on other things. But I have nothing. I will say that I hope at our May meeting, well, let's keep going. Let's do the consent agenda.
Can I
nothing
just
under
share
committee
about
goals.
the school
Subcommittees,
futures?
yes.
Yeah, which is not quite a subcommittee, but a relevant committee, so I
Okay.
just wanna share.
Yes.
The Pelham Elementary School Futures Committee had our first meeting, I will be sharing. I will get there, but we have meetings scheduled through the end of May, you are all welcome, they're public meetings, they're on my town government. Dr. Z was voted in as vice chair, I was voted in as chair, we're rotating secretarial duties, but Sarah Sikora is holding the responsibility there. It's a great group, everybody's really excited, the other people on the committee are Ann Nugent, who's a longtime pediatrician and I think chairs the Democratic Committee, and Kara Kestenson from FinCom.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you set up a YouTube to stream those and record them?
Dr. Z, if you're still there, I think you said that you'd be able to work with me on getting it on ARPSTube next time, is that true?
I
Yeah.
did.
Yay.
Okay, great, yeah, we'll try, we'll work on that and I can just share an update once we're there. The next meeting is not till the end of April, I think we'll be able to get there.
It is, it's in April, but I think I just saw your email, so
Yeah.
I'll work with Megan to set that up.
I don't know which ones you were.
I have
Sarah. And you and Dr. Z.
Yeah.
Sarah Segura.
And Kara Caston.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said something tonight about a 10-year timeline?
Yeah, so we have a 1 year, or not even a 1 year, we have till the end of December we're doing research for the next 10 years of Pelham Elementary School, and this is relevant for everyone to understand. This is a research committee. Between now and end of December, the committee is charged with doing research on 4 topics that the select board presented. I've been going since 6 AM, I'm sorry, guys. But 4 topics from the select board, and we started populating a list of, I think we're gonna land on 5 others, so a total of 8 to 9 topics that we're trying to do a full scope of research on.
But the research is on the next 10 years of cost projections for those things. It's not going to do a whole lot for like the immediate future of the school. My understanding is that the select board's vision is that next, after this research is put together, there will be another committee, or perhaps this committee would extend to make recommendations based on that research.
Okay, but the research is due in December, not 10 years.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll blame that on 6 a.m. 3 and all.
It's like 10 years, like.
Yeah, but like, yes, I just wanted to clarify well, of course, the next 1 to 10 years will be included in there, but it's really a long-term vision.
Great,
Gotcha.
great.
Yeah.
Okay. Subcommittee consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? It's unanimous, 5. All 5 unanimous, okay, and then future agenda planning, Sarah Bass, I just wanted to mention. We are going to have some joint meetings between now and sometime in June. And something will be forthcoming.
Yes. We're looking at one in April, one in May, one in June. There are a bunch of policies, first and second things that will need to happen. We are looking at finalizing the superintendent's evaluation tool for this year. Though in the historically in we have a joint meeting to for the superintendent to present, discuss the artifacts, and then also I think in May I'm not sure if it's May, to discuss the superintendent's goals for the following school year. So we are not planning all yet. So there will be, the chairs are working on coordinating all of those things. They will be an additional meeting outside of the regular meeting schedule because there's been too much stuff already sorted.
The evaluation is May or June? It's like we do the evaluation in June?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, we're working on having the tool approved. And then I think the way we have it set up is the tool to be approved in April.
Great.
Start the discussions about next year's superintendency goals in May, and then the presentation for the current school year in June.
It's June, and then we will have to have a subsequent meeting for Pelham. Well, each of the districts will have to have a subsequent meeting to present the findings from the evaluation.
Yeah.
So, I would hope for May that we can spend some time looking at the school committee goals. Yeah. So, goals.
For future agenda, I know last summer became impossible, but I would love if we could schedule a retreat.
Oh, we will definitely not retreat, and my hope is we might get some assistance
Yeah,
from MASC.
but I
Maybe
just if
it's
we could
a bit-
start the scheduling in April or
So
May.
everybody knows when it's going to be,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense, so
Yeah.
let's talk about that next.
Great.
Or
I guess in May. Let's see.
yeah, because our next meeting. Early May, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Good. Thank you, everybody.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Everyone.